We're just over a month into the season and already we have clubs in a supposed crisis. No, I'm not talking about Hamilton Accies, yet, or Edinburgh City with their 15-point deduction. I'm of course talking about the big two in Glasgow. Celtic have once again failed to navigate the Champions League qualifiers, with chance to sack the board ringing out during their game with Kairat Almaty, while Rangers have had a rather shaky start to the season to say the least. So, in this video, I'll be looking into the complaints that both sets of fans have towards their clubs and ask if they really are in trouble of finally being toppled or at least split in this upcoming season. Rangers, since their return to the Premiership, haven't really been consistent title challengers like their fans would have hoped for. Their first season in 2016-17 saw them finish third, 9 points behind Aberdeen and 39 points behind an unbeaten Celtic side. They would once again finish third in the 2017-18 season, again behind Aberdeen but only by 3 points, with a 12-point gap to Celtic. 2018-19 would see them get runners-up with a 9-point gap to Celtic, followed by the curtailed 2019-20 season where, with a game in hand, they were 13 points behind. Any complaints about them winning the league were just... no, they were not winning the league that season. 2020-21 would see Rangers finally get a hold of their first league title upon their return after an incredible unbeaten season under Steven Gerrard, finishing 25 points clear of a Celtic side that were a bit of a basket case that season. The following seasons have seen them revert back to being runners-up though, with Rangers not being able to match Celtic when it comes to building a squad or even when it comes to managerial stability. Since the end of the 2020-21 season, Celtic have had two managers, Ange Postecoglou and Brendan Rodgers. Rangers, meanwhile, started with Steven Gerrard before he left for Aston Villa, Giovanni van Bronckhorst, who managed to get them to a Europa League final before losing on penalties to Eintracht Frankfurt, who would then be sacked after being 9 points behind Celtic, along with what was the worst Champions League group stage performance by any team the following November. Michael Beale, Gerrard's assistant, would come in, but he would be sacked the following October, following a poor run of league form along with being knocked out of Champions League qualifiers by PSV Eindhoven. And then Philippe Clement, who despite leading Rangers to a top 8 finish in Europa League, meaning they would go directly into the round of 16, a defeat to St Mirren would see his reign come to an end in a season that would see Celtic finish 17 points clear. Evidently, this managerial merry-go-round is not the way to success, and ultimately, this lays at the board having an itchy trigger finger. There were also issues with substandard transfers, again not helped by having a new manager every year, meaning they were never capable of sustaining a challenge to Celtic. This, however, had hope of changing as rumours began swirling around of a big takeover. The 49ers Enterprise Group, who own the NFL franchise San Francisco 49ers, hence the name, although ignore that they play in Santa Clara, which is 41 miles from the centre of San Francisco, or the equivalent of Aberdeen playing in Arbroath, along with having ownership of now English Premier League side Leeds United. The 49ers Enterprise have a supposed net worth of about £5 billion, and upon the completion of their takeover at the end of May, they immediately made £20 million of investment available for the summer. They would bring in former player Russell Martin as manager, who had finished mid-table with Milton Keynes in League 1, finished 15th and then 10th for Swansea in the Championship, and then at Southampton would go on a 25-game unbeaten run as they went on to win the playoffs to earn promotion to the Premier League. His Premier League tenure did not go well, however, with him being sacked with the Saints rock bottom with only one win from their opening 16 games. Martin's appointment was met with some scepticism, but his playstyle revolving around possession-based football and high pressing was something that he has received plaudits for. To build a squad for Martin, a very busy transfer window took place. 14 arrivals at Ibrox, including Bojan Majowski, Yusuf Chamiti, Oliver Anteman, and Jedi Gassama, saw Rangers spend £27 million in the summer, but also received £24 million in player departures, such as Igamane to Lille for £10 million and Hefte for £6 million. So with all this excitement, how have Rangers started their season? Not well. Competitive football started with a 2-0 win at home against Panathinaikos and a 1-0 draw in Athens, but there were complaints about how shaky the defence looked. Their Premiership opener saw a 1-0 draw with Motherwell, where again complaints were made about the defence and the Motherwell attack if you're Gogsy. Pilsen made the trip to Ibrox and were defeated 3-0, which was pretty good going, but this was followed by another 1-0 draw, this time at home to Dundee, in which a dodgy penalty saw Rangers snatch a point against Stephen Presley's side. They would lose 2-1 in Pilsen, but they would get their first domestic win in the League Cup after beating Alloa 4-2. Yeah, they conceded twice to Alloa. The first goal was quite funny though. So, with these defensive concerns, it was only a matter of time before a team with a competent attack would turn up and expose them properly, and that would come when Belgian side Club Brugge would go 3-0 up after 20 minutes at Ibrox, with no small help from some comical defending once again. Rangers would get a goal back and have another disallowed, but a 3-1 defeat saw them staring at the Europa League once again. Rangers would draw 1-1, this time away at St Mirren, before a trip to Bruges would end in humiliation. A red card for Max Aarons would contribute to Rangers being 5-0 down at half-time, with a final score of 6-0 arguably being generous, with Butland keeping it below double digits in what had become Rangers' worst aggregate defeat in European football, leading to me getting the fear that the cooperation agreement would see some of Reef's players moving to Ibrox. This led to fears over what would be coming the following Sunday as they were up against Celtic. Rangers, however, would finally keep a clean sheet in what was one of the worst game of footballs I have laid eyes upon. Aside from a John Sutter goal being disallowed for offside, nothing happened in this game. There was a total XG between both sides of 0.32. It probably doesn't help that Celtic are also a side with their own issues. Celtic have been dominant since 2012, with them winning all but one league title in the past 14 seasons. During this time, however, there has been a consistent complaint within the fan base about how the board handles their business. We need to go back to the 3rd of March 1994, when Celtic needed to pay the Bank of Scotland £1 million in the next 24 hours, or be wound up. Fergus McCann would come in to save the day, proclaiming,
My message to Celtic supporters everywhere tonight is simply this. The game is over. The Rebels have won.
And starting a revival of the Glasgow club. Celtic were quickly put on the stock market, seeing £14 million raised, which was enough to massively redevelop Celtic Park, which was in a bit of a state. Celtic were able to get their hands on the title in 1998, but would always remain somewhat frugal to avoid falling into the same state they were in during the 80s and early 90s. It doesn't help that Rangers had a policy of spending £10 for every £5 Celtic spent, which ended well. Staying frugal but still competitive ultimately worked, as with Rangers going under, Celtic had no domestic competition and could arguably focus on Europe. Celtic are, most notably, the only Scottish club to win the European Cup, but haven't reached a European final since the UEFA Cup final in 2003, which they lost to Porto. Whilst they were consistently in the group stages of the Champions League, they never really made an impact, and this was something Celtic fans were hoping would change. This hasn't really happened though, has it? Whilst clubs that are arguably in a similar situation of being a big fish in a small pond, clubs such as the Portuguese and Dutch Big Three, have all made good runs in Europe over the years. In the last 15 years, Celtic have made it past the Champions League group stage twice. 2012-13 where they defeated by Juventus, and 24-25 where they were beaten by Bayern Munich. Their record in qualifiers for the Champions League, however, has been shocking. 2017-18 was the last time Celtic reached the group stage of the Champions League after navigating qualifiers, with wins over Linfield, Rosenborg and Astana. 2018-19 saw Celtic draw at home and then lose away to Greek side AEK Athens. 2019-20 saw a defeat to Romanian side CFR Cluj at home. 2020-21 they would be knocked out at the second qualifying round by Hungarians Ferencváros. Another second qualifying round defeat to Danish side Michelin came in 2021-22. 3 consecutive seasons of group stage football would follow thanks to Rangers doing all the hard work down the coefficient mines, but this season saw them lose at the playoff round on penalties to Kazakh side Kairat Almaty, who started as an unseeded team in the first qualifying round. This is where the ire of the Celtic fans is coming from. It has nothing to do with their domestic success at this point, as it has become expected. A lot of this is down to the fact the Celtic board seemingly refused to spend money. Whilst, yes, they have spent £13 million, which is something fans of other clubs can only dream of, they have earned £26 million from players sold, leaving a net profit of £13 million. 24-25 saw a net profit of £9 million, 23-24 saw a net profit of £16.2 million, 2022-23 meanwhile saw a net spend of £22 million, but despite this, their accounts saw a profit before taxation of £40.7 million. It's this cash hoarding approach by the board that has got fans annoyed. The last set of accounts to show a loss before taxation, not including COVID, as just about everybody made a loss then, are all the way back from the 2014-15 season. For a company, that is a very good record. But for a football club, it shows a malaise in the board. It makes it appear that the board are happy with where they are and don't want to take risks to move the club forward. They're just happy hoovering up the domestic trophies and have the token appearance in the Champions League group stage, which again, brings in a lot of money. It probably doesn't help then that this transfer window has also been messy for Celtic. Their two biggest signings have been Sebastian Tunekti for £5.6 million and Michael Ange-Balikwisha for £4.5 million. These, along with the signings of Iheanacho on a free, all came after the playoff defeat against Kairat Almaty, meaning they only spent £3 million going into the season. There have also been stories of how they missed out on the likes of Kasper Dolberg due to putting in initial offers that are half the selling club's valuation, failing to offload players due to not answering phones, and there still being areas of the squad where there is a severe lack of depth. So, what's my thoughts on the mess that both clubs find themselves in? First of all, I find it hilarious, seeing as I support Raith Rovers, so any of these crises over not doing well in Europe or only finishing second in the Premiership is basically the same as me laughing at someone crashing their Ferrari, whilst I rely on Stagecoach for most journeys. If you want some serious analysis though, then here's what I have to say for each club. Starting off with Rangers, sacking a manager every 5 minutes is not going to work. Gerrard is the last manager to complete 2 full seasons, and the ownership has been in the door for 5 minutes. It's going to take time to create a title-winning side, so just back off a bit, don't expect a title every season, you're probably going to finish second anyway. Rome wasn't built in a day. For Celtic, it's a difficult one. They win everything, nearly, but those European runs are shocking. I don't blame the fans for being upset with how the club is run when, again, you consider clubs of an arguably similar size have much better records in Europe. I don't see what they can do other than apply pressure to the board by voting through their wallets, seeing as that's all the board cares about. Unless we see a meltdown akin to the 2020-21 season, Celtic have a squad that is going to win the league and at least one of the cups, which, as mentioned, is the bare minimum at this point for them. Or, fans of both clubs can come together and bow down to Tony Bloom's Gogi overlords, seeing as they're now winning the title apparently.
And I, for one, welcome our new insect overlords.
That's all for this video, and of course, I hope you enjoyed. How do you see Rangers and Celtic's season going? Will they remain as the top 2? Will one of the Edinburgh sides split them? Will Aberdeen rediscover their early form from last season? Okay, maybe that last one is unlikely. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Channel memberships are available through the link in the description. Those who have signed up have their names on screen now. Liking, sharing and subscribing are all appreciated, and I will see you in the next video. If an angry mob of dads haven't got to me, that is. Bye.